What is the fact that most people don't know about WW2? Nagasaki and Hiroshima were chosen to be bombed largely because they were some of the only remaining large cities that weren't obliterated by Allied bombing missions. Japan had been firebombed so severely and constantly the US was quite literally running out of large cities to destroy. Finland walked a very fine line during WW2, and their current existence results from very good decisions that their leaders made during WW2. Obviously they lost land to the Soviets during the Winter War. They grabbed this land back once the Germans invaded and reached Leningrad. While the Finns were aligned with Nazi Germany, they did not participate in the siege of Leningrad, despite many overtures from the Germans to do so. Once the tide went against Germany, Finland retreated from the land that they had retaken, allowing the Soviets to regain it. The willingness of Finland to not directly support the Germans and to permanently give up land lost in 1939 resulted in Finland not being seen as an enemy to be punished after 1945. Their neutrality and decision to not join NATO was further proof to the Soviets that Finland was not a threat to their existence, and modest trade relations existed right up until the fall of communism. Of course, since the current invasion of Ukraine, Finland has naturally felt threatened by a more bellicose Russia, and has joined NATO for their own safety. Note that Finland was part of the Russian Empire prior to the revolution, and while the majority of former Russian territories became communist under Lenin, Finland became independent and embraced a liberal democratic form of government. So Finland was always a target of Russian/Soviet expansion. That the US Army was fully mechanized by 1942 while Germany never reached more than 30–40% mechanization of their army. 60–70% of German logistics during the entire war was supplied by horses. Heard this on a history podcast a while back that an estimated 19 to 28 million people died after the war was over due to starvation and disease. Between military and civilian casualties, World War II claimed 3% of the people on the planet. The Yamato and Musashi were sister battleships and the mightiest in the world at the time of their commissions, but a third sister was planned that would have topped them all. After Midway the IJN saw the light and halted construction, recognizing the fading significance of battleships, and built an aircraft carrier, the Shinano, on her keel. Shinano was torpedoed shortly after leaving Japan by the USS Archerfish and sunk, an event which was promptly covered up by the Japanese government to the point the US Navy didn't recognize Archerfish's accomplishment until post-war records came to light that the ship, in fact, existed. That it wasn't just Jewish people who were persecuted in the Holocaust. It was also communists, socialists, gay and trans people, disabled people, and anyone else who was viewed as degenerate. One of the more clever, yet still insane, ideas the Nazis had to fight the Allied powers was to devalue their currency by introducing large amounts of counterfeit bills into their economies. Imagine a bomber flying over London dropping millions worth of pound notes. Jewish jewelers and artists were press-ganged into fabricating the printing plates, and the resulting counterfeit British pound notes and US dollars were used by spies in their respective theaters to pay for food, housing, and other supplies. Ultimately, the war took a turn for the worse for Germany before they could try dropping the notes en masse. Nazis, soldiers and officials, used methamphetamines on a daily basis. There were regular fights among the Allies when white US soldiers stationed in Britain didn't take too kindly to black soldiers being allowed into the same bars as them. There was a Korean man named Yang Kyung-jong who fought for 3 different armies. He was captured and conscripted to fight for the Japanese, Soviet and German armies. A Jewish prisoner wrote on the walls in the concentration camp, "If there is a God, he will need to beg my forgiveness," or something along those lines. I confirmed it just now. Every Purple Heart medal given to US servicemen from 1945 to the present day was surplus from World War II. We minted so many medals in preparation for a land invasion of Japan that we still haven't run out. I believe we were expecting about 1 million casualties. Being liberated by the Americans and British was a hell of a lot better than being liberated by the Soviets. The OSS, predecessor to the CIA, had a plan to demoralize Nazi troops by having a member of French resistance spray commanding German officers with what was essentially military-grade fart spray. The thinking was, if you sprayed an officer with shit and he smelled really bad, people would be less inclined to take orders from him. They very quickly learned this was a very stupid idea. There were two battles in which the Wehrmacht and the Allies fought side by side against the SS. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/battle_of_castle_iter https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/operation_cowboy. Fanta was invented by the Germans because they needed a replacement for Coca-Cola. Also, the idea that carrots give you better night vision / are particularly good for eyesight comes from a propaganda campaign. See, the British didn't want the Germany to know about radar, for fear that they might work out for themselves how to build it. So they needed a way to explain their significantly better identification of incoming aircraft. Obviously, they couldn't say anything to the Germans without it being transparent manipulation, so instead they launched a propaganda campaign at home, telling their citizens to eat carrots and keep a watchful eye on the skies. And as their accuracy in spotting planes got better, they told their citizens that citizen reporting was making the difference. It's a clever lie, really, gets the citizenry engaged and patriotic, and it's just so stupid that it feels like I couldn't make this up sort of thing. That there was a legit brown bear called Wojciech, Pron Wojtek, who served in Polish land troops and took part in the Battle of Monte Cassino in Italy. He became quite famous by acting as soldiers, smoking, drinking beer, resting with them. He grew up with the troops as he was found as an injured cub in Iran. He traveled with them through different countries and got to live the rest of his life in Edinburgh Zoo. Bareface. British children growing up in the war didn't know what bananas were as food was strictly rationed. They considered a banana a luxury to the point where kids thought it was a myth. The Australia gun used was called the Owen gun. It was made by a 17-year-old and found by a neighbor who happens to be an arms dealer to the Aussie military. He took it, tested it, and it outperformed other guns. They asked the parents and 17-year-old if they could use it officially and he said yes. They named it after him, Owen. A gun made by an Aussie teenager.